Welcome back to the Caribou Media Outdoors podcast. With me today is KC Davies from Sevr Broadheads. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, super excited to be on here.
Yeah, this is awesome. We've been chatting back and forth on social media, and now we're finally face to face. So it's great. It's awesome.
It's good to put a face to the name and the
right?
email.
That's right. That's right. Who is this guy? Who is this guy that keeps bugging me?
No, you're fine.
So yeah, I kind of asked the same question to start everything off. Just well, first we'll let everybody know, for those that are living under a rock and maybe never heard of Sevr. Do you want to tell everybody who you are and what you do at the company?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Casey. I got hired this last year as the brand and sales manager for Sevr Broadheads. So essentially just somebody to come in and kind of fan the flame that they already had going. Well, not a lot of people know this, but Sevr is actually a company of Easton. So I sit in the Easton building. Easton's who writes my paycheck, all that good stuff. So they really hadn't put a whole lot of emphasis on Sevr. It'd always been kind of a side thought for a lot of them. So it was like,
okay,
hey, get this Easton project done, we'll go work on the Sevr thing. So it was always kind of an afterthought. And it was very impressive how well Sevr had done without a focus on it. And so that's kind of what they hired me for, was to come in and put a huge emphasis. My only focus is Sevr, and seeing what that can do for the sales and for the brand itself.
Okay. Yeah. Wave the flag as hard as you can, kind of thing.
Exactly. Just sit there and fan it as hard as I can. That's what I've been trying to do. So
yeah, well, you do a great job because I'm seeing them everywhere. I think I first heard of them from Aaron Snyder a couple years ago. He was shooting them, and then guys like Joe Gabo and SG Homes, they've been using them extensively and have had incredible success. So it's
they're a bunch of studs.
They kind of speak for themselves, really, and we'll get into all the details about it. But to start off, I always like asking people what, if you can remember. Some people can't. Well, when do you remember first picking up a bow, and how did that kind of transition you into bow hunting?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of two different stories in one. So I mean, growing up, you go to Boy Scout camp and shoot a bow there, and I had a little recurve that my parents bought me when I was younger, and we go out and try to shoot birds with it and stuff like that in the backyard, but never really got the itch for bow hunting because none of my family bow hunted growing up. We were all just rifle hunters, through and through. We just go rifle deer hunting one week of the year, and that was it. But when I left college, so I went to college for 1 year, and I came back and I got a part-time job at Shields. So I don't know if you're familiar with what Shields is, but big sporting goods store. They essentially have a pro shop inside their stores, so they carry high-end bows, and not just your, no offense to those companies, but like the Cabela's bows and the Sportsman's Warehouse bows and stuff like that. So they actually had good quality stuff and good quality training. And I got hired on, and I was like, "Do you know anything about archery?" I was like, "I shot a recurve as a kid. Teach me." And the guy that started teaching me, his name is Dustin Whitwer. He really just took me under his wing and kind of taught me the right way to start on how to shoot bows. And I just absolutely fell in love with it that year. So I was 19 at that time. Went to a full-time bow tech position. So I was just around bows all the time for 2 years straight. And then I ran the archery shop for another 4 years. So
nice.
Essentially, once I got bit by the bug, it was
just
game
straight
over
up.
just game over from there. So I go on an occasional rifle hunt here and there nowadays, but everything's 90% bow hunting, which is, if you would have asked 16-year-old me, I'd have been like, "You're freaking crazy."
Yeah.
If I'd have been this invested in the bow hunting world. So
why would I want to make it harder?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell this story on everyone, but you don't know it yet. So I'm going to tell you. I started same sort of thing. I wasn't at a camp, but it was at like a family resort where it was very outdoor activity driven. So they'd hand out like a sheet of paper that had activities for all the kids throughout the days to give the parents a bit of a break. And they'd say kids 8 to 12, you go to the swim dock and we're going to do something fun, or go to the boat dock and learn how to flip a kayak. And then after lunch, go shoot archery behind the gym. So I think it was 7 at the time. That was my first introduction to it. And I just loved it. And then my mom would go up to her friend's farm and I'd tag along because I was couldn't be left alone. I was too young. And her friend would be like, we want to chat and drink coffee. So she goes into the closet and pulls out this like $20 fiberglass bow and like three arrows, missing fletchings and stuff. She's like, go shoot the horses' hay bales out there, get out of here, like, right, scram. So and then kind of high school, we had an archery team for I think 1 year. It wasn't very long, and we did recurves for that. It wasn't very good, but it was fun. And then completely separated from it. My friend from the archery team buys a bow, a compound. So I had no idea what a compound was at this time. And he calls me up. He's like, I just bought one. You got to get one. They're amazing. I'm going to bring it over to your house. And I'm like, okay, but I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant. So I shoot left for everything. So he comes over and he's like, just try it. I'm like, I'm going to miss the target by like 3 feet. And he's like, just try it. And I loved it, but I definitely missed the target every single time.
Yeah.
So that kind of like lit the fire again. And then, eventually I was able to get my own. I got a Hoyt Helix Ultra in 2019, and it just kind of went on my first bear hunt with it, shot a bear, and I was like, I'm hooked forever. This is just like insane. I love it. So
once you shoot something with a bow, it's so hard to go back. It's like the rifle kills that have just been like cow elk and stuff like that. It's just like, you're harvesting an animal and it's important, but it just doesn't have that same feeling of accomplishment, I guess.
And the first year I went up to a family property, I had a rifle. I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I like where I am. I like what we're doing, but I didn't really have the connection to the gun for that purpose. Like I've always shot targets with rifles and stuff, and I have rifles, but it wasn't until the following year when I came up with my own bow that I was like, okay, now this makes sense. And then watching the bear come in, and I was like 16 yards from it, and he was just watching his movements and everything. And it's just being that close and sucked into that moment. It was just, that did it for me. So
so much more intimate. So
and then of course I wanted to see, I never found the first bear I shot. We never found him.
Oh shit.
And the shot was too high. He ran past the tree, snapped the arrow off. There was no blood. We never found him. And then I was like, I wish I had this on film. And that's where the whole filming thing started for me. And then YouTube and all that other stuff. So that's kind of how I got here. And then the whole podcast just kind of bloomed from that. So, so let's get into the lineup a little bit here. So I reached out to you a little while ago because I wanted to do a broadhead testing video with, I had only ever shot fixed blades, because at the time, you get a couple people say, oh, mechanicals, they don't open, blah, 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 which is maybe truth, maybe truth a long time ago, but a long time ago, right? Like all of those problems have been corrected, and the amount of technology that's in these things now are bulletproof, right? Like they're incredible. And I just learned that even more with this test that I did, shooting them into ballistics gel, shooting them with field point. They were just lights out, like incredible. And the fact that you can, I have a prop here.
There you go.
The fact that you can put a screw in here and shoot the same head that you're going to go hunting with as a practice head is just amazing, right?
Well, just the amount of confidence that gives you is huge. You can't buy confidence really, and so you have to gain it and earn it. And being able to put the exact head that you're going to try to put into an animal into practice lock, and you're putting it in a target. I mean, nothing can beat that, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. So this is the 1.5 hybrid. So it's got bleeder blades.
Yep.
And is a 1.5 inch cut, but the total cut is 2.2 when you include the bleeder blades, right?
Yep. So overall cut, when you would do the 1.5 and the 0.7 inch bleeder blade, it ends up being 2.2.
Yeah. And then I just love the fact that they lock and they're not going to close on their own. And then should you hit some sort of dense object, the blades will swivel and pivot.
Yeah. And not a lot of people get that for some reason. So can you kind of explain, or I can explain it, but that whole pivoting blade, what that does is if that broadhead was coming against it and it hit a bone, if it was stuck in that position, it's essentially going to be like a bullet ricochet. It's going to hit that and want to deflect upwards or downwards or left, right, whatever it wants to do, versus that is actually able to push that blade out of the way and keep that cutting going through there. And then as it cuts through, it's going to swivel that blade back around and you're still passing through.
And that increases the cut as well on that side, right?
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people are like, oh, it takes it to a 0.75 inch cut. It does make it smaller than the 1.5, but you're still getting, 0.9 inch cut going through that. And then as soon as it swivels back around, you're back to that 1.5 going through there.
Right.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's great technology, and I'm glad we kind of have it on that patent. So nobody else can take it from us.
Yeah. And there's dates attached to those, is there not? For patents? Is that how they work?
There is. I think we got another 5 years on this one. And then we have a few patents that are for products that are coming out soon. So
right. Yeah. Because I remember I did I used the 1.5 in one of the videos, and then I did another one with the whole lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And I had multiple people message me saying that 1.75 is like the perfect mixture of both the 1.5 and the 2.0. And if they ever put bleeders on there, my God, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, well, I guess anything's possible, but we'll have to wait and see what
happens.
The future holds, because we don't know.
No, and that hybrid, that launched 2 weeks after I got this job. And just seeing the hype around this, like I've always kind of followed Sevr because they're here local for us here in Utah. So I've always kind of paid attention to what they were doing. And I mean, this absolutely put us on the map. It was crazy what we did with sales with that hybrid. It actually was our number one selling broadhead, even though we came out with it 6 months into the year. So, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Holy cow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Once it dropped, it was like gangbusters. My phone was just blowing up for about 2 months straight, it felt like. So
that's awesome. And they're sold separately, which is also a neat thing. You can kind of mix and match, and if you wanted to get different ones from the lineup or however you want to see fit, you don't have to necessarily buy 3 at a time.
Well, that's the nice part too, is like, before I started working here, working in a shop at Shields, I was playing with every head that came in. It was like, okay, well, this one came, I'm going to give it a try. So you buy a 3-pack, you end up hating it. Well, then I've got 2 broadheads just sitting around that I don't want to give a buddy, because it's like, I don't like this broadhead. Why would I give it to my friend? And so
here, take these. They're great.
Yeah. So, if anybody's on the fence about our broadheads, it's nice because you can just pick up one and try it. And if you like it, buy more, but you're not committed to a huge investment of, buying a 3-pack. You can spend $17 and buy a single,
Right. And was the first one the 1.5, or was the first one the Robusto 2.0?
So if you want like the full story of Sevr, I can do that real quick. So
let's do it.
So how Sevr kind of became was Ulmer Edge. I don't know if you're familiar with what Ulmer Edge is, but it was a real popular broadhead back in like 2010 to like 2015 or so. And it was made by Rusty Ulmer, Randy Ulmer's brother. And it was the whole point of Randy could never find a broadhead that he liked that would fly straight and cut, because he's a big long distance guy. So he's shooting mule deer out in Nevada, 70, 80, 90 yards sometimes. And he was just like, I can shoot my field points this good, but I can never get a broadhead to hit where I want it to. Right. So his brother developed the Ulmer Edge, which they did that for a few years, kind of got sick of it, and ended up selling the patent to Easton. And that's when we designed the Sevr Broadheads. So our engineers took it, put our own tweak on it, with the same premise as the Ulmer Edge. They had an aluminum tip, or steel tip and an aluminum ferrule. And we decided that titanium was a better material to make it out of. So we upgraded to titanium, and then started with the 2.0, the titanium 2.0. And then we had what they called an AP17, which I think we discontinued 3 or 4 years ago. And the AP17 was kind of that all-purpose. And so when we came out with the 1.5 and the 2.0, we were like, well, we're missing that all-purpose. So that's when we decided to come out with that 1.75. Is kind of that. We call it the Goldilocks broadhead. It's the just right. Yeah,
That's
not too big, not too small, just right.
And then the Robusto 2.0 is the only one that's 150 grain. Is that more for crossbow?
So this
or
is
the heavy arrow crowd.
Yeah, so when I came in, I started to notice because everybody, my training and stuff like that, doing research on the heads, it was like, well, the Robustos are crossbow head. And after working in the industry for so long, I'm like, well, every single crossbow is sent out with a 100 grain point. Nobody's sighted in for 150 grains, even though 150 in the long run helps us so your strings stay together longer on a crossbow because it absorbs more energy. Um, there's a few benefits of running heavier, but nobody ever wants to because they're sighted in for 100 grains.
Right.
So we're actually in the process of getting rid of the Robusto as a crossbow head, and we're developing a 100 grain head of some sort that's going to be fitted for crossbows. So we're actually going to capture that market a little bit better, and then we're designing a 150 grain 5/16 head for our high FOC hunters because I realized that there was more people were buying the Robusto and running them on a compound bow than buying a Robusto and running them on a crossbow. So I was like, we kind of have the market here in 150 grain because there's no other 150 grain mechanicals that I'm aware of. And so our plan is to shrink that down and offer a high FOC broadhead for our customers.
Yeah, that'll explode for sure.
Yeah, we're excited for that one. That's gonna be a fun one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a lot of I've kind of gone down a few rabbit holes with my whole setup. I started out with like I think the bear that I shot, it was a 550 grain arrow total weight.
Okay.
And I used a 150 grain single bevel 3 blade from another company, obviously, and kind of wanted to, heavier was the thing at the time, so I went up to 600 and then like 615, and it's like, whew, you can see in some of the earlier videos, it's like, right, just the lob on them. But again, if you're, there's arguments both ways, but if you're shooting from 20, 30 yards or less and you're in a ground blind or tree stand and that's what you want to use, then go for it, right? But the farther you get out, you're just losing. The gap is so huge. And then I kind of went backwards and went to 550, then 500, and then 485, and I was like, okay, now we're getting into a little bit better of a sweet spot here. So
well, it's just that whole finding that give take, because as soon as you start going heavier, your speed obviously goes way down, and so it's like finding that sweet spot that you're comfortable with. And I kind of went through the same thing this last year. Like I had a full Easton setup of FMJs, the long ranges, and they were just heavy suckers. I mean, I think it was 555 is what they ended up being. And I mean, I passed through a deer, passed through an elk. It was great, but I realized that I was dogging going out there. So like my gap between 70 and 80, I mean, I was missing by this far. So I actually built a lightweight setup myself I just got back from a coos hunt. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, if I have a coos deer at 90 yards, if I'm off by a yard, I'm going to miss this thing completely. With my heavy setup. So I built the new Easton 5.0 out to be, I think it's like 435, and it's shooting like 299 feet per second. But now at 90 and 100 yards, my gap is this much. So if I'm off by a yard, I'm still able to hit that animal. So I guess it just depends on the application.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go a little bit more weight for elk hunting again this next year, but I think for deer, lightweight's great too. Yeah. So it's just finding what you're comfortable with or what you're confident with.
Finding your sweet spot. Yeah, for sure. Those 5.0s, just to go off topic slightly, I'll have mine in about a week, and oh my gosh, I can't wait. I've only ever shot Easton arrows. Shot Easton. I've kind of gone through. The Axis was first. Shot those for 5 years. The Sonics came out, and I completely fell in love with them. And then I went to go buy more, and everybody else loved them because there was nothing else in stock. So then I found the 6.5s, so I grabbed those for this past hunting season. And then I was going to go back to the Sonics, and I started seeing those experimental stickers popping up, and I was like, what are they doing over there? And I was like, sending Cody messages like, "What are you doing over there? I know you can't tell me, but I want to know." And he's like, "Don't, just wait. You'll like it." Right. So sure enough, I waited, and wow, that is going to be the arrow for everyone everywhere. Like it's just, you think about the guys that are shooting FMJs, they just gained like 30 feet per second by all the weight that they're saving with
and that FMJ is my favorite arrows too.
Yeah.
But
so good.
No, I'm excited. What kind of inserts are you running on it?
I got the 55 grain half outs.
Oh, nice. Okay. The titanium ones, or?
Yeah, I've never tried them before. So the new ones so I thought I'll give the half outs a try. But I know the hit and the collar is probably going to be really good too. So
yeah, I ended up doing the 50 brass and then the collar, the 22 grain collar on the front. And that super durable system.
Yeah.
I missed a couple times out here. We have a range behind the work here. And I missed a few times and I was like, oh, that's not going to be good. And went up and it's still intact. So you can't complain, burying in a foot or so into the dirt. And arrow's still in great shape.
Everything's good. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for those to show up. Let's see what else here. So the 2.0s are obviously 2-inch cut and 100 and 125 grain. For those, and then the 1.75. Yeah, Goldilocks is a great way to describe these.
That's what our engineers called it, and I was like, that's honestly perfect. That everything's in between, and the penetration we're getting on that head is insane. Like I had a buddy shoot a mule deer here in Utah, and he shot it at 75 yards, 76 yards, or something like that. It was quartering away, and it came into the guts out here, and it popped out this shoulder coming out, and it was like sticking out like a foot or something like that. And he's a little guy; he's got like 26-inch draw or 26.5-inch draw.
Oh wow!
And so it was like, to hear that, I was like, oh, okay, that's a good head. So
yeah, and when I shot it into the ballistics gel, I had 20% FBI ballistics gel, so it's even thicker than the 10% stuff. And I was amazed how well all of them did, but especially the 175. And just to see that, like, just that wound channel, just devastating, right? Like, oh, so good to see.
And that's what's kind of fun about this hybrid is, like, you get that big nasty wound channel with the mechanical cut, but gosh, like the elk I shot this year and the deer I shot with that hybrid this year was just insane, because that cross cut just opens it up more like a hole on impact versus that kind of slice cut going through there.
Right.
And I mean, the instant blood trails were insane. So
yeah, it almost cuts it so that it can't close.
Yeah. So like I use this example quite a bit, but it's like a bayonet wound. So that's why bayonets are spaded or like a cross cut, is because when you'd get stabbed by one, surgeons couldn't stitch it up because it'd be that cross cut and you couldn't get the skin to kind of come back together. And so it's the same kind of logic on an animal. If an animal lays down in a certain way on a slice, he's able to maybe lay sideways, and that puts pressure and kind of clots that wound, versus having a cross cut in a hole. He's not able to lay in any sort of way to allow that hole to kind of close up.
Right.
So
it's going to keep going.
Just the little things like that. Yeah. That you don't really think about. And it's been a real popular one for our bear guys, because I don't know, I've never shot a bear, but from what I've gathered is apparently their hide just soaks blood up like crazy.
Insane.
And so the guys that have used the standard 2 blades and then they ran to these 4 blades this last year, I was getting reports of like, this is the best broadhead for bears, purely because the fact it's opening up a hole and it's not allowing that blood to just go right into the fur. We're actually able to get some of the blood out of it and get a blood trail on them, which I guess is a huge problem. So something I didn't know, but I guess it's a big answer for a lot of people.
It definitely is. Like, if it's not the thickness of the hide, the fat is also in a whole nother layer of thickness that it just plugs everything, right? And having that expandable cut, but then plus having the bleeders, it's just going to do even more damage. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going to be in my number one position for bear season.
There you go.
So yeah, can't stop thinking about that. So aside from the broadheads, there's a number of other things you guys offer. So you've, like you said, you're connected to Easton, so you offer the match grade field points as well.
Yep.
On the website.
So those are all machine, same thing as Easton. So they're essentially, we take them out and just brand them in a Sevr package is the only difference between them.
Yep. Just want to take a quick break to talk to you about a couple of things that I've been using that I think might benefit you. One is this Numa Outdoors gear. This is in their Kaza OV pattern, which is great whitetail pattern when you're up in a tree in the fall and late season. They also have a Kaza pattern which has more green in it, which is good for spring through to the fall. Numa has given me a code to give to you of Caribou Media 20, which will save you 20% at checkout. Another product here that I've been using for years now is the Bulldog targets. This is a Canadian made target. They're made in Manitoba. They have a lifetime warranty. I've used that warranty twice now on a couple of my larger targets that are outside. It's very simple, very easy. These targets are 2-finger removal every single time, which is incredible. Field point only target. Bulldog's been gracious enough to give me a 20% discount code to give to you at checkout. Use code BD20-Caribou-Media. That'll save you 20% on these awesome targets. Now back to the show. And also the 21-inch HD target with easy pull foam. I've got one of those, and it's spectacular, especially for broadheads. Like, just the multiple sides, different target faces. It comes with an arrow puller. Yeah, it's just it's an awesome target.
Well, the side I really like is that grid side. That's the 1-inch squares going around it. Yeah, and so for sighting and crossbows, just because they act more like a rifle scope where you're moving it in MOAs in 1/4-inch increments. I really like that crossbow target just because that frame. So if you're aiming center and you miss 4 squares to the right, you're like, okay, well I have to move it however many MOA that is, and so you have an exact movement on there, so you can actually see how far you're missing, which is, I think, super cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And then we've got the quiver.
Yeah. The quiver that finally made it to you.
The tight spot quiver is wicked. I had one for 2 or 3 years, and then I switched to another company's quiver and immediately missed the tight spot because I just wanted there's nothing that gets that close, that tight, right? And the fact that the hood is nice and open so that you've got lots of space for your mechanicals, and you're not going to run into foam that's going to, open up your broadheads prematurely.
Accidentally deploy them, yeah. Real quick on that, just a tip for anybody listening that has had that issue. So what I do is I take one of the extra O-rings and I run it all the way down to the base of my fletchings. And so if I'm ever in the field and I accidentally pop it open, which everybody's done it, it sucks. I'm able to just grab that O-ring and slide it back down the shaft instead of having to unscrew my broadhead, look at my backpack, try to find an O-ring. I can just hurry and reset it within 5 seconds. So just one of those little tips that might save a hunt for somebody down the road.
Oh, for sure. And these titanium barrels are pretty well indestructible. So if you ever have an issue with the blade bending or breaking, you do sell replacement parts as well. So you don't have to necessarily get rid of everything. You could just reload it and build it up again. The same with the O-rings. They come with on the website. They've got replacement O-rings as well, which is great.
Yeah, and it's funny, man. I get calls about once a month of guys ordering broadheads. It's usually older gentlemen who don't know how to work the internet. But they'll call me to order their stuff. And I was talking to a month ago. He's like, oh, season's over. He's like, I got my 2 broadheads I need to replenish. And I was like, oh, okay, what do you need? He's like, I need 3 packs of blades. And he's like, I've had these 2 broadheads for 3 years. And that's the only thing I've ever shot. And he's just like, I just replaced the blades and put it back in my quiver. It's good to go. So he shot, I think he said it was like a dozen or 13 deer or something like that with those 2 heads, and he just keeps replacing the blades. It's wild to me.
There you
Because I'm the
go.
kind of guy, once I shoot something, it usually goes, with the animal or with the rack or something like that. Like I have the arrow on display. But
Oh,
this
okay,
guy's just
yeah.
like, nope, screw it.
Nope.
I'm just gonna put it back on.
Let's go. Round
Yeah.
2.
Yeah. Or round 12, whatever it is nowadays.
Yeah, round 12, round 30. And then you've got 2 different cases for transporting these. One's the deluxe and one's the stay sharp. What do you know? What's the difference there?
So I might have a stay sharp. No, I don't have one here. So that they're kind of different. So the deluxe one, a lot of people don't know this, but you have to keep the little packages we send the broadheads in, so the little clear cases, because it's designed to fit a dozen 2 blades or 6 hybrids in there.
Okay.
And so you just leave the packages in it and it holds them. So I always have one of those in my truck that if I see somebody that bow hunts, I'll pull one out and give it to them or whatever. And then the stay sharp is actually the one that I like to use for like my hunting kit, because what it allows you to do is you can actually just put your arrow down in it and unthread the broadhead, because that gripper inside there grabs the head. And so it's able to unthread it, so you're not touching any blades at all, or not exposing your hands to getting cut by especially those freaking bleeder blades, because I've been cut 1 or 2 times by playing with them. So it just saves you from and they stick you good.
You should have seen my hands after these videos. And I was like, oh my god,
scars everywhere. But that's kind of the nice part. So I keep one of those in my hunting kit, just because then if I need, I can throw an arrow down in there, thread it on, and pull it out, and it's ready to go. So
that's cool. That's a very good idea. And these cases, for those of you that don't know what they look like, and if those of you that are listening, I'm showing one. It's great. This is even great to, I mean, obviously if you're gonna buy a bunch of these, get a case, but just transporting these alone in this little thing is really nice, that it's all tucked away, and you can put replacement parts in there if you wanted to, extra O-rings, and comes with a couple and a screw, the locking screw too. So
in the lid there.
Yeah, it's neat.
No, and that, as I was going to say, it's going back to the whole singles thing. That's actually my first experience with Sevr was 2019, when they first came to Total Archery Challenge here in Salt Lake. I walked up and started talking to him. I was like, oh, what's this? And like, oh, we're Sevr. And I asked him, because I was in retail, I was like, you guys going to go to retail? And they're like, no, we're all online, but here, try one. And so they just gave me one, and I actually shot my first whitetail with it back in 2018. Yeah, no, it was 2018. Yeah, 2018 when they first came out. And it was the same thing. I shot it in practice mode. I was like, this thing flies pretty good. So I had a Missouri whitetail hunt and went out there, and it was the lead arrow of my quiver, and shot my first whitetail with it. So it's crazy how just one broadhead can impact somebody,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just blown away when I locked them all up and I shot the field point at 40 yards and then shot all of them, and they were all basically touching the field point. I was like,
can't argue that.
Can't argue that. Some people are like, oh, I have to now sight in for my broadheads because they're going to shoot, so many inches to the right or the left or lower or whatever. Not with these. And, a lot of people will claim field point accuracy. I can say, because I've done it, and I'm not paid by you guys to say this. I'm saying this because I've actually used it and done it. They are 100% right on with your field point.
And just for the viewers out there or the listeners, did you notice any difference between the whole series, or was it pretty true all the way through, like 1.5, 1.75, 2.0?
Yeah, they were all pretty true. I think they went in like a circle.
Just a nice little tight circle in there.
Right around the field point. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a common question I get. I get guys that, especially when the hybrid came out, they're like, I've been shooting the 2.0 for years. I've been shooting the 1.75 for a year or so. How does it fly? Because that's our number one question we get. And from what I found, it sounds like from what you found, they're all right there together. And
yep.
People get that a lot because they're worried about that little bleeder blade on there of causing more drag and more turbulence. And
I didn't find that.
Yeah, what I always tell people is our engineers took 2 years to build that, because they took so much time playing with where that blade went and how big the blade was, because they wanted to make sure that we still had that same accuracy out of a 4-blade head. They're like, we're not going to sacrifice our pinpoint accuracy for adding an extra blade. And if we can't do that, we're not going to come out with it. And so they finally were able to capture where it's at right now. And that's why we're seeing the downrange, 80, 90 yard accuracy still out of that hybrid.
Yeah, because you'll see some companies have if they do have bleeders, they're at the top or they're way down at the bottom. But yeah, finding that sweet spot was you definitely found it with this one. It's I didn't see any kind of deviation in the flight because it had that extra bit on the front there.
Yeah, it shocks a lot of people. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's like my number one question I get. They're like, there's no chance that could be that accurate. It's like, it is, just got to try it. So
yeah, trust us.
Yeah. But I mean, to their defense, every mechanical head out there is saying there's fill point accuracy, even though.
Well, yeah, I know.
No, they're not all true. So.
No, but everybody has their favorite. Like I had John Mulligan on here a few weeks ago, Johnny Utah from Primal Divide.
Man, you're just getting all my guys.
I know. Grabbing them all.
Yeah.
He's in love with the 2.0s.
Mm-hmm.
He said
he's a freaking killer, dude. That guy.
Oh my god. Yeah. He we had a great chat, but he was like, yeah, 2.0 is like my sweet spot. I love it. He goes, I'm gonna give the 1.5 hybrid a go for probably the next hunt I do, but he said I keep going back to that 2-inch cut. It's just awesome.
Well, there's some guys, man, especially guys that have been around the block a bunch of times. Like that 2.0 must be something special because we have Kyle Douglas up north here. I don't know if you know who he is, big target archer and stuff like that. And I gave him a couple 2.0s because I was asking him what head he wanted to try. And he was so stuck on 2-inch broadheads. He's like, that's all I'll ever shoot. He's like, I won't touch anything smaller than that. He's like, 2 inches is the only way to go. So it's funny to hear guys that are super successful being stuck on that. There must be something right with that 2-inch.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you heard of any like we know how effective they are with compounds? Have you heard of any recurve people shooting with them?
So funny you asked that because I don't know if you saw that Stu picked up a recurve recently. Mm-hmm. So we're in the works. I sent him, I think, a dozen 125 grain 1.5s.
Okay.
There has been claims, but I just want it actual like proof now. I have talked to a couple guys that have said they've shot stuff with the 1.5s in a recurve, but I want to have like actual evidence of it. So I challenged Stu. So he's planning on running those 1.5s out of that recurve he just picked up.
Well, yeah, I was talking to him a bit when we finished when we were off air or whatever, and I said it makes sense because if it's lower pounded shooters are going to shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't that translate to a recurve? I said, you're probably going to get a whole lot of, traditional hate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But I don't see why it wouldn't work. Like there's no reason why it won't work. Right.
No, I mean, when you're seeing compound bows, which I compare low poundage compound bows to like recurves because they're pretty much shooting the same speed, same energies. And so when I'm seeing kids emailing me that are 14, 15, pulling 40 pounds, 24-inch draw, and they're getting either almost pass throughs where the broadhead's sticking out the other side, or they're, burying it into the fletchings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure recurve's going to get it done too.
Yeah.
So.
And the perfect guy to give it to, because he's got, I think, you just tell something like 5 million deer down there. Like it's just insane. It's just the numbers. It's like, what?
I need to go line something up with those guys and go hunt with them.
Holy cow! He's like, yeah, you can shoot. I think it's like $3 for the season, but you could shoot a doe every day if you wanted to.
Because he's down in Alabama, right? Yeah, and Joe's in Ohio.
Yeah.
Yep. Gosh, no. I think he's going to be able to do it. I was watching his target practice video the other day, and he was like, "Oh, he's pretty freaking deadly with that thing already." So
yeah, it'll happen for sure. I talked to him about the doe that he shot with it, his first doe, and he said his son was on the ground and in a ground blind and had the vantage point, saw the arrow zip right through it.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, it was so wicked. So. Yeah, I bet you'll get some awesome data from Stu. That's for sure.
And I'm hoping so. And the guys I've talked to that have done it. So if anybody's wanting to try it before we get the stuff from Stu, but a lot of people said to double band, because of what it does is it allows it to have more penetration before that blade starts to open up.
Oh,
And so if you double band them, you're able to get that head to go in maybe an inch further before those mechanical blades kick open. So you're able to punch through the hide, and then when it's that soft, meaty stuff, your head opens up and is able to get better penetration.
okay. That'll be
So
interesting.
yeah, I've heard that for like turkeys too, like where guys have issues of, broadheads hitting a turkey and popping open a little too early. Double banding them allows it to kind of drill through the feathers a little bit more before it starts
Okay.
cutting. So
That's
hopefully that
interesting.
helps somebody.
Yeah, for sure. You're probably not gonna be able to tell us. Is there anything new that you can let us know that's coming down the pipe?
We do have 2 heads coming out.
Two.
Plan is, or we actually have 3 heads coming out. So we'll have 2 coming out end of May, early June. We're just trying to nail down the exact deadline for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have another launch coming in August. So more catered
Nice.
towards our whitetail guys, and that's why we're doing a little bit later launch on that.
Awesome.
So,
That's exciting.
but yeah, it should be fun. It's kind of fun being in the testing experimental phases and stuff like that. So wasn't able to shoot anything with it, but it is what it is. But we were able to get a couple good kills and hopefully get some bear kills here soon. But everything we've seen so far, I don't know if you saw that little clip that Jared Thomas put up of him talking on his podcast, but just the carnage and the blood he got on that Coues deer he shot with it was insane. So
oh really? Oh,
yeah, we're excited for it. I think it's going to be the answer to a lot of people. So
awesome. That's exciting. So you had a couple hunts this year that were pretty memorable.
yeah.
You want to talk about those?
The deer hunt was memorable because it was probably the easiest deer hunt I've ever been on.
Oh yeah.
Which sounds so stupid, but it was second day of the season here in Utah, and we kick off in August. And I texted a buddy the night before, and I was like, "Hey, you want to come up with me deer hunting in the morning? I'm just gonna go. I have a little loop up here on the Wasatch that I like to run. It usually takes about 4 or 5 hours to hit all the glassing points and make it home. So you're home by like noon." Mm-hmm. He's like, "Yeah, I'll come up with you." So we got up there, pulled into the parking lot. It was dumping rain. And I start digging through my backpack. Can't find my rain jacket. I left it at home, and I was like, "Of course." No. So looked at the radar, and I was like, "Okay, well, let's sit here for half an hour." I was like, "It looks like the storm's going to blow over. We'll just hang out for half an hour. It's not ideal, but whatever." So half hour rolls by, storm breaks. We start going up. It's like first light already. You can already start seeing stuff, and I'm like, "Gosh, this is not going to produce anything." But we're here. Let's just do it. Started walking up the trail. Got about, I think, a mile and a half in or mile in or something like that. Stopped at my first glassing point, looked over, found a buck bedded like 400 yards off the trail. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I can stalk him, I'm going to go try to shoot him. And it was just a nice little 4x3, nothing too crazy, but I haven't shot anything with a Sevr since 2018. So I was like, I need to shoot something with and it's a decent buck.
It's a deer.
So start checking the wind. And I look at the route to get to him, and I'm like, the wind's right in my face. There's cover the whole way to him until about 70 yards to him. And I'm like, this is going to be a cakewalk. If I can walk over there, I'm just going to shoot this thing. So my buddy stayed there. I took the, walk over there. It took me about 30 minutes to stalk in on him. Popped around a corner at 70 yards. He was laying underneath a tree. Drew back, whistled at him to get him to stand up. He stood up, smoked him. He went 70 yards. And I was like, well, that was that. That was the easiest deer hunt I've ever been on. Like, I mean, within an hour of leaving the truck, we had one down. So
that's
couldn't
amazing.
complain on that.
And what were you using for that?
That was a 1.5 hybrid.
The hybrid. Okay.
Yep. And I mean, clean pass through at 70 yards. I couldn't find the arrow because it just zipped through it, and I had no idea where it went. I think it went off. There's like a little cliff he was standing kind of by. I think it zipped over that and went off the cliff. So there's an arrow up there somewhere. But yeah, but he only went maybe 70 yards, like I said, and went on a death run straight downhill and piled up pretty quick. So that was a fun hunt. And then my hunt I do every year, and it's the lowest odds, stupidest hunt you could ever do, but it's the over-the-counter elk here in Utah. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy hunt. I think the success rate's like 8% or 7 or 8% or something like that. So it's a tough one.
Challenge.
Yeah, like last
Challenge
year, I mean,
accepted.
yeah, and it's $50, so it's not like you're investing a ton of money into it, but it's like, it's worth a shot at least.
Mm-hmm.
But me and a buddy went and did it last year, same kid that was with me this year, and I think we did like 85 miles in 6 days and
Wow.
saw 5 elk. And so it's like trying to convince him again to go back into this almost the same exact canyon. I was like, trust me, I just think we were a little too early last year. So
Yeah.
we went bombing in there. I got big old blisters on my heels the first night because I wasn't prepared and was too ignorant to stop and take care of them. Hunted hard for 2 days, didn't see anything. I was like, gosh, this is going to be just like last year. It's like, we're not seeing anything. We're not hearing anything. We're not finding even fresh sign. And I had another buddy that was up there with us, and he went over and looked into a canyon that we'd hunted last year. And he texted me because we had those inReach little satellite messengers.
Yep.
And he's like, dude, there's elk going crazy in this canyon over here. And so he came back over to camp. We made a plan to go back in there. And I think I had 4 more days to hunt. And I looked at my buddy that I was with, and I was like, if we're going to do this right, we're going to have to go home. Because like I was like, I can't, with my feet in the condition they're in, I don't feel good. We're at 10,000 feet, so you're just gassed all the time. And I was like, if I go home and get a good night of sleep, I was like, we can go in and actually give it our best effort for 4 days instead of like half-assing it essentially and going in there tired. So we drove 3 hours home, spent all day Saturday at my house, and slept, ate good food, had the whole plan of, okay, we're going to go back in on that Sunday. We have till Wednesday. We're going to hit it hard. Well, we passed my buddy coming out, and we were going in, and he was like, dude, they're going nuts back in there. And I was like, why didn't you kill one? And he's from Wisconsin. He's like, I've never hunted elk before. He's like, I don't even know how to call it these stupid things. And he's like, they were like 100 yards away. He's like, I don't know what to do. And so I kind of felt bad because we didn't leave him, but he had
Come with us.
Yeah. And so he had to go back to work. And so I was like, I looked at my buddy and I was like, closers are going to close. And so we went back in there, literally set up camp. We had this little spot that we like to camp at. It's like a point that comes down with some meadows and streams and stuff like that. Set up camp, made this whole plan to go up in the afternoon. We're like, let's just chill. We got, an hour or two to kill before it starts to get like prime time hunting. So we're sitting in camp, just BS and eating the mountain house. And we're about 6 miles in. And so sitting there BSing, and all of a sudden I just hear like an elk bark. I don't know if you know that distinct, that, and it just scares the crap out of you. And I look over, and like 60 yards from our camp, cruising through the pine trees, there's a bull elk that came down in. I don't know if he was looking for cows or something like that. So anyways, we made this, got all scrambled and wanted to figure out what was going on, tried making a play on him, but just he ended up fizzling out. So I was like, all right, let's hike into where this kid said he saw these elk at, or was hearing all these elk. So I think it was like 3 hours before dark. We start hiking up this trail and stopped for 2 seconds. I think I had to tie my boot or something. I don't know. I stopped and bent down, and all of a sudden I just heard just like the faint end of a bugle. And I was like, that kind of sounded like a bugle, but I'm not 100% sure. It was just like oh. And so I pull out my bugle tube and I just let out a locator bugle. And it was like a real deep, grunty, gargly noise from across the river. And he just answered back. And I was like, that's a freaking bull. So, my buddy run down to the river. We try to find a place to cross it. Finally end up crossing it and start working up this other hillside up the basin. And he's answering back to us, but he's slowly working away. So he was like, he started by the river, but he was slowly working up this mountain. And I just looked at my friend. He's never really hunted elk. And I was like, we just got to get wind right and get at his level. And so we pretty much just shut up and like ran up that mountain with the wind where I knew it was right. Got up, let out another locator bugle. He was maybe 200 yards away. And so at that point, friend couldn't call. And so I was like, hey, you stay here. Don't mess this up for me. Because if you have two people, it's going to, more scent, more, more stuff to go wrong. So I left him there, probably like 50, 60 yards behind. And I started cruising up the trail, and I got eyes on the bull and started just lightly cow calling at him. And he would answer, and I could see him up on this hill just raking a tree. And I was like, gosh, he's fired up. Like, he wants to come in. He's just, how am I going to convince him to come in? So I got to like 60 yards at the base of this hill. I did a bark chuckle and then an estrus cow call buzz.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched his head peek up, and he just turned without saying a thing, came beelining down below me. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's my shot. And so he's like at 50 yards coming down through the trees below me, and I draw back, and I'm like, okay, he's going to come through that window, and he stopped right before the window. And I was like, what is he doing? He's just standing there like, I mean, you can see his nose coming out from in front of it. And it's just like, just take 3 more steps.
Just checking.
He just turned and took off. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And come to find out, after I met up with my buddy, he was staring my buddy right in the face at 5 yards. So my friend's down there filming. He has no idea what's going on. He's trying to film me calling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he says, I heard a twig snap, and I look over to my right, and that bull's looking right at me at 50 or 5 yards. And I didn't see my friend down there. He was hiding behind the pine tree. But if I would have shot him, he would have been like 4 or 5 yards in front of my friend. He would have got a front row seat to this bull getting smoked, which would have been cool. But
yeah.
So anyways, he took off, and I'm like, gosh, did he wind me, or like what happened? And so I let him go for like a minute, and then I was like, I'm just going to let out one last bugle, just see if he still wants to play, and let out a bugle. Sure enough, he answered 200 yards down the face, and I was like, hey, well, game on. So I just cut distance as hard as I could and got in this like little seam. And I was like, this is probably where it's going to happen. He's up above me on a little bench. Started estrus cow calling buzzing at him, and did like those like light kind of chuckles, not like a full bugle, but like when a bull's trying to like court a cow, that that little thing. And I could see him tearing off down that hill coming straight towards me. So I'm like, oh, this is it. So I draw my bow back. He's on a straight line towards me, and he stops right by a pine tree. So it's his body, pine tree, and his head's trying to come over the pine tree. So he's trying to see what I am. And I had ranged it right before he came down that hill, and it was like 25 yards or something like that. And I look down, I'm at full draw, and I look down, and there's a hole in the pine tree that's like this big, right where his chest's at, like that frontal shot. And I'm like, never taken a frontal shot.
Do it.
I'm sitting there all within 5 seconds. I'm just like, do the frontal shot. You watch Jason Phelps do it a bunch of times, do the frontal shot. So I drop it down, let it rip, and I mean, you could just hear that whack, and he spun, took off uphill. I started cow calling. He just kind of dropped out of sight on the other side of like a little ridge. So I'm like freaking out at that point. I'm losing it. I start cow calling frantically towards my buddy. I'm like getting him up there. And so he finally comes up. And we're sitting there. It'd been like 3 or 4 minutes. And this is kind of a little, I guess, something that I do every time. But my grandpa was my biggest like hunting fan. Like whenever I'd go on a hunt, he would always call me afterwards and want the recap and all that stuff. So he passed away in 2017. So I always say like a little prayer to him. I'm not super religious at all, but for some reason that's like my connection I have.
Yep.
And so I told my buddy, I was like, hey, I'm going to say a little prayer real quick to my grandpa. And so I took my hat off, said my prayer, just help us find this bull. I'm not kidding. I literally put my hat back on, and 200 yards up the hill, you could hear him crack. It was him, but you could hear a big crash tumbling down to the trees. And I'm not kidding. It was within seconds after I put my hat back on. And so my dad told me, he's like, Grandpa was up there and just pushed him over, because where we went up, he had stumbled. You could see where he was standing there bleeding out. Yeah. And you could see where he crashed, hit a tree, came down into a pile of deadfall, and that's where he ended up falling down. But yeah, I went maybe 200 yards max, and I mean, completely bled out. And the blood trail was one of the craziest I've ever seen. After 15 yards, it opened up, and I mean, it was a highway of blood. My buddy Danon, the kid I was with, he's colorblind. He can't see anything. So whenever we're blood trailing something, he's like, you just got to point at it for me. He's like, I can't see it. He's like, it just all looks like.
Is it a different color entirely for him, or does he just see red?
It goes like gray for him.
Gray, okay.
And so it blends in a lot with like the dirt and stuff like that. And so we were walking up, and I was just on it. This is a highway. I'm just my headlamp on, just following it. And he yells from back behind me. He's like, it's a good blood trail, and my what did he say? My colorblind ass can follow it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll have to show you guys pictures, but I mean, it was just an absolute highway of it. And so it took amazing. 2 minutes to track him, but the blood trail was insane. And then when you got up to him, I mean, just the puddles of blood around him was crazy. So anybody contemplating taking a frontal shot, do it. Because if you can make it accurately, that's probably the deadliest elk shot I've ever seen. So
yeah, Yeah, there's one I'll never forget. Some kid, there's a clip that keeps going around the internet. This kid, I think he looks like he's probably 14 or 15. And this elk comes within, like, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 feet of him. And he
Mhm.
shoots it, and it just stays there standing. And it's like someone turned on a tap. Just the
Yeah.
blood is just coming out. And he's just it doesn't run away, doesn't do anything. The bull just looks at him and then just collapses, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Whoa."
Gosh.
That's crazy.
No, like, cause you always think like that's gonna be a poor shot, like, cause you're taught growing up broadside. This is where you want to put
Yeah.
it, right behind the front shoulder. That's what's
Nope,
ingrained
yeah.
in your brain. So when you're presented with something different, it's like it was hard for my brain to get myself to want to do it.
Mhm.
But in that split second, I've seen all those Phelps videos and stuff like that where he's talking about shooting in frontal, and I was
Yeah.
just gotta send it. So yeah,
And
it's
where did you see the path of where the arrow went when you opened it up?
so it came in a little high in the throat. I didn't. How far back we are? We do gutless.
Oh, okay,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so and where he died, it kind of was a pain in the ass too, because he died in a patch of deadfall on a hill that was like that.
Oh.
So we had to tie him up and move deadfall. And so, anyways, I didn't really get to see, but I put a 28-inch arrow to the nock in his throat. So
Wow.
I'm pretty sure, just kind of like seeing an elk's anatomy, I'm pretty sure it went back into his lungs.
Oh,
And
for
as he
sure.
was running, it was just grinding his lungs up, because
Just spewing it out, yeah.
the amount of blood, because even when I accidentally poked part of the diaphragm, and it was just like gallons of blood came pouring out of him. So
Mhm.
whatever
Wow,
it was freaking deadly. So
that's amazing. Yeah, I went on an elk hunt 2 years ago. We have a very, very small herd here in
mhm.
Ontario, like, I wanna say 1,200 animals, so they only let out, like, 100 tags and, like, 3,000 people apply, so
Oof.
you're never gonna get one here, and if you do, you'll never get another one. So,
Yeah.
my wife's cousin is out in BC, and, he's actually a guide out there, so I said, "Hey, if I come out there, wanna take me around?" He's like, "Absolutely." So, we had this whole thing planned. We drove really, really far up north. I brought my son with me. He was 16 at the time, and I was trying to pass the camera off to him as much as I could. And
Yeah.
we had a couple of, and again, it's really tight in there. Like, you're not going to have any wide open spaces like
Mhm.
Montana or something where you're coming over a hill and there's a whole herd there. He's like, it's
Yeah.
going to be very, very tight. And we would go into like cut blocks where the forestry company had come and gone and try and call them out from there. We'd go in after them, all this kind of stuff. And it was a huge learning thing for me because when you go on the internet or on YouTube or whatever, people are always belting out the loudest, most epic elk call you're ever going to hear,
Mhm.
and 9 times out of 10 you're not going to necessarily get that. You'll hear that sometimes, but it's like usually a fraction of, like, a quarter of that kind of a cadence or half of it. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
you said, they just gave out a little bit of a bark here or a little sound here. It's not necessarily going to be some massive, epic
Earth
roar
shattering. Yeah.
every single time. So we had a couple opportunities where we heard them, but they wouldn't come to where we were, and then we'd go after them, and they were too far ahead of us. But we had this one, said this one where we were in a cut block, and a whole bunch of trees deadfall was down, so we're kind of hiding behind there, and I can hear it off to the right, and it's coming out. And I'm thinking, this is going to be incredible. My first time elk hunting ever, and I'm going to have an opportunity to shoot. And it was probably about a 60-yard shot from where we were hunkered down to where the elk was going to come out. And we're waiting and we're waiting. And I'm turning to my son, Logan. I'm like, okay, so just do your best, try and keep it in focus. Just touch the screen. Like, I can work with whatever you do. Just keep it in focus, right?
Yeah.
Let's try to give him some pointers, right? If you don't get it, whatever, it's fine. But just, do your best. So we're waiting. And then you can hear him getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And then I hear a car coming behind
Oh.
us. And some dude drove into the cut block that we walked into. his he had like a little Chevy Tracker, and he's got a dog, and the dog is just barking, barking, barking. And he jumps out and he's like, "Hey, you guys are trying to shoot the bull that I've been after for 3 days." And I'm like, "What's going on here?
What?
What is happening right now?" And so he's like, "Yeah, I've got people in there going after that." And I'm thinking, "Okay, whatever, buddy. Like, give me a break here. We're so close." And now, of course, he's
Elk's
moving.
gone.
He's
Yeah.
gone. But then we heard more bugling off in front of us. I'm like, "That sounds like people." That sounded real. That sounds like people, right? And it was just, we were so destroyed from that. And then we go back to our camp, and we wake up, or sorry, after dark, we're sitting around the fire and stuff, and we could hear like little chirps, from like there's cows like around us in the thick stuff. I'm like, this isn't funny. Either those, and they sounded real, right? I'm like, no one would be back there screwing around with us. Like, this is crazy. So we go to bed, we wake up, and now there's tracks, elk tracks, right through in between both of our tents.
Oh my gosh. I'm just teasing you.
And it was the last day of like, we need to leave. Like, this is driving me nuts, right?
Get me out of here.
It was an awesome experience, but yeah, I'm gonna try and definitely go back. I still have the elk bug. Here we've got like turkey, black bear, whitetail.
You guys have muleys there, or no?
Not in Ontario. You'd have to go like out to Alberta is probably the
or
best
Saskatchewan, or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So where I am in Ontario, I could drive 5 hours and get to like Quebec, but there's not a whole lot different than here out there. So if I wanted to go west, I'd have to take a 2 or 3 day drive north and then go around all the lakes to get out.
Oh, yeah, because you got that big pothole region going through there.
Unless I jump on a plane. So I kind of envy you guys from time to time where you can just jump from state to state, or stay where you are because you have a multitude of animals at your disposal. But
no, it's a ton of fun jumping around, especially as I get older and I can afford stuff.
Yeah.
Going to Arizona, and I got Colorado lined up next year and all that stuff.
Oh, nice.
So should be fun. But I was going to say that now Stephen Ranella, I worked an event with him 2 years ago at Shields. It was like a book signing thing. So I got assigned as Ranella's like bodyguard essentially for Shields. Like, I made sure that he got everything he needed and all that stuff, which was super cool for me because I'm a huge fan of him.
Yeah.
But I listened to him take probably 500 questions that day because everybody got one question with him, and the most common thing was, "I'm new to hunting. What's your biggest tip for me?" And I was sitting there, the first time somebody asked me, I was like, "Oh, he's going to talk about glassing or something like that." And his number one tip, he's like, if you want to have good experiences hunting, he's like, whatever you can afford, put in for. He's like, you will thank me in 15 years when you're going on epic hunts every single year because you put the time in to actually draw good tags. And he's like, that's my number one tip for everybody. Put in for as much stuff as you can.
Yeah, because we all love watching the videos on YouTube, and 9 to 15-minute videos of people being successful. It's awesome. But the only way you learn and get better is by physically going out there and doing it yourself and getting
more opportunities,
getting that exposure, getting that opportunity. Yeah. So,
I mean, even like I learned something every time, and I've been bow hunting for 12 years now. It's like every time I go out, it's like, oh, I didn't think about that, or, oh, I'm going to do that a little bit different next time. Or, that's just the fun part about it, is it's always, even if I don't kill something, there's something I can take home from it,
Right. Yeah.
So
what kind of a bow were you using, or what setup do you have now?
So right now I've got a Hoyt VTM 31. So I think it's 3 years old now, or 2 years old.
Yep.
I used to be the get a new bow every year kind of guy, every year. And I was a big Matthews guy forever. And I finally got this Hoyt 2 years ago, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something. I'm actually going to keep this one for a little bit because I just shoot it really, really well. And it's like, why not just get proficient and deadly with one instead of having to remix up your whole bow every year and trying to resight it in? And so don't plan on changing, but yeah, that Hoyt VTM has been an awesome bow for me.
Yeah, I've bounced around a little bit. I had a Hoyt and then shot that for a few years, and then I got a Prime, shot that for a couple of years. Last year I used the Elite Ethos, and that was great. I was at TAC. I went to Pennsylvania TAC and shot the Alpha X, and I was just like, the changes that they've done since what I was used to from Hoyt was just outstanding, right? It's like, oh my gosh. So it's amazing how they can improve year after year. And especially if you wait a couple of years, like most people, there will be people that buy one every year, but I think most people wait that 3 to 4 years. And then you're noticing that much more of a change in the technology and everything else.
Yeah. I went to a Matthews training back in 2016. So I went toward their factory and they did like a sales training and stuff like that with us. And that was their big thing. They're like, we're on a pattern with our bows, and this is how most bow manufacturers are, where every 5 years is a drastic change. So that's their whole plan, is because on average, most people buy a new bow every 4 to 5 years. And so they wanted to keep up with that. So if you notice like bow lines, if you go 4 years at a time, it's like drastic changes in those 4 years. But that's when you'll notice, they said you'll drastically notice a difference in the 4 years. So if you take a bow from 2020 and go to 2024, that's going to be a huge difference versus 2023 to 2024 is not that big.
Right.
So
I don't know how they do it. The stress that must go with trying to change something enough to make it,
Yeah. No, and it's just that whole manufacturing thing. Like they told me, Matt McPherson, the engineer, he's got bows lined up for the next 10 years. It's just he tries to find when the perfect time to release it is, versus he has the technology, he just doesn't want to release it quite yet.
Just sitting on
which
it,
is wild to think about. Like what kind of creations are out there that are in engineers' brains that they just haven't released quite yet.
So. I know, because every year I think the same thing. How are they ever going to make these more proficient than they already are? Like they're just so spectacular now, and then sure enough, they come out with something. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's great.
No, speaking of new bows, I really want to try that Prime this year. That thing just looks cool.
Me too.
Like people make fun of it because it looks kind of weird, but I think it looks like that's the most drastic change in a riser I've ever seen.
You know what I think it is? And I've talked to a couple of people about this now. And Brian Anderson from Prime is coming on tomorrow. So I'm going to talk to him about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're looking at two things that are normally separate.
Mm-hmm.
It's either aluminum or carbon. So when you see them together, you're like, what am I looking at? Right? And you kind of take a second to like, and some people are going to be right off the bat say no, because, aesthetically, we always say that you have to fall in love with the look of it first, generally, and then hopefully it shoots well and you love it. If it doesn't, you move on. But yeah, I think there's something there. And again, you're talking about G5, and those guys are manufacturers first, right? They're so engineers and first. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how well it does.
Yeah, no, and see what they do with it in the years going forward.
Yeah, because really, I mean, if they shorten up those little carbon rods, you could make it any size you wanted to, really.
Yeah, no, some cool technology, man. It's
very
crazy
cool.
What, like just picking our engineers' brains here, and just some of the stuff we have projected for 5-6 years down the road. It's just like, I don't know where you're coming up with this stuff. But
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in some of those meetings. Like, like I was talking to the engineer from Elite, and he was like, I said, I know you can't tell me anything, but like, you got stuff that's like, you got people working on, like when I heard Prime was working on the form for like 10 years or 8 years or whatever. He's like, yeah, we got stuff that we know we want to put out next year. And we know that we have stuff that we're working on that we might be able to add to it. Like he said, we might be working on a dampener that might be ready, but if it's not, we'll just wait, or we've got other people working on this other project over here. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's amazing.
Yeah. No,
and the amount of everybody's doing the same, like company to company, they're all doing the same kind of, like you said with Matthews, they've got stuff ready to go for the next 10 years. It's just, when is it time to open the door?
Show the world, right?
Show the world. Yeah. Have you done any saddle hunting, or are you more spot and stock?
So everything out here is spot and stock, but I'm probably gonna buy. I got reached out to by Tether Gear, just asking for some heads, so we got kind of an industry deal together.
Trade.
We'll trade. But I'm planning on picking one up because I've been talking with a friend. I really want to come out to like the Midwest and try that whole like public land Midwest whitetail hunting where you just run and gun, hang saddles up. But No, I'm interested to learn more about them though. That's something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's awesome. I got one this year from XOP. Normally I had like a ladder stand and I was kind of stuck to that. I wanted to be more mobile. I wanted to go check out more public land. So it was perfect for that because you literally strap it to your backpack and away you go. And you can go up and down any tree you want. And you've got full like 270 degrees around the tree, all different angles. Like it's just spectacular. So yeah, I think you'll really like that for sure.
No, and even for like elk hunting here in Utah too, like early season, like a lot of people don't realize that one of the best ways to kill elk is on a tree stand over water.
Yeah,
and so
I saw a couple people do that. I'm like, that's smart.
And so my plan is if I get a bug up my rear end, I might run up and hit some of the water holes I know, and just like if I have a day to kill, just go up and throw a set up and sit there for the day. Can't beat that. So
yeah, they're pretty comfortable too. I almost fell asleep in one. So they're very good.
Sketch me out. If I woke up hanging,
it is weird. It is weird. You're like, oh, all the thing. The only thing that's holding me up here is this rope that's wrapped around right here. But,
I don't know how much trust I have in that, but
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks again for jumping on here, and you're welcome back anytime when new stuff comes out, or if you just want to talk about something else, you're welcome to it. Let everybody know how they can find Sevr.
Yeah, so right now we are just direct to consumer, so we are online only. So you'll find us at sevrbroadheads.com. And I was going to bring this up when we were talking about the singles, but if anybody wants to try a single broadhead, use code SEVRFREESHIP for free shipping, so you don't have to pay the $8 for shipping if you want to just try one of them. So if anybody's out there is like, what's this guy talking about with Sevr Broadheads, go give it a try. So
yeah, you won't be disappointed. They're awesome. They really are. Amazing. All right. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.